Welcome to the Geriatric Dietitian, your go-to resource for nutrition that supports health, independence, and confidence in aging. I'm your host, Katie Dodd, registered dietitian and geriatric nutrition expert. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Geriatric Dietitian Podcast, 7 Key Nutrients for Older Adults. Today, I'm going to be talking about 7 key nutrients for older adults and why nutrition needs can change with aging. Now, before I jump in, I want to make something very clear. All nutrients are important. Every single nutrient is important for the human body. Our bodies need lots of things to work: carbohydrates, protein, fat, vitamins, minerals, fluids, all the things to properly function. So when I talk about these 7 key nutrients, I'm not saying that these are the only ones that matter. The reason I'm highlighting these nutrients specifically is because as we age, some nutrient recommendations change compared to younger adults. So maybe the recommendations are that older adults get more of this nutrient than younger adults, or even what the science shows on, hey, we might need more of this nutrient as we age. Now, in some cases, older adults may need more of a nutrient. In other cases, absorption changes with aging and there's a higher risk for deficiency. Now, of course, I'm probably going to say this every episode, but every older adult is different. These are general recommendations and not individualized medical advice. So someone's needs can vary based on the medications they're on, their medical conditions, even their appetite, activity level, and so many other factors. So again, as I am covering these 7 nutrients for older adults, you might be like, Katie, you forgot this. Katie, you forgot this. I'm not forgetting it. I'm just highlighting 7. Because remember, all nutrients are important, and based on your individual situation, some nutrients might be more or less important than others. Now, this episode is meant to be a high-level overview of these 7 nutrients, and then over our next several episodes, I'm going to do a deep dive into each of these nutrients individually. We're going to talk more about the food sources, deficiency risk, maybe supplements, practical strategies. So this episode, here's the 7 nutrients, and then in the next series, I'm going to dive deeper into each one. So let's dive in to the 7 key nutrients for older adults, starting with vitamin D. Our first nutrient is vitamin D, and vitamin D is important for so many things in the body, including bone health, muscle function, and immune health, all of which are very important for everyone regardless of aging, but especially for older adults. What makes vitamin D different for older adults is that the recommendation is actually higher as you age. And older adults tend to get less vitamin D from the sun. So if you're not familiar, we often call vitamin D the sunshine vitamin, meaning if you're exposed to the sun, your skin absorbs and synthesizes vitamin D in the body. So we know that in older adults, the skin is less efficient at producing vitamin D from sunlight. We also know that many older adults, again, not all, may spend more time indoors. If they do go out, they might be more likely to wear the hat, all the skin protection from those harmful UV rays, but can also potentially prevent with that vitamin D absorption. And also, vitamin D is naturally found in very few foods. Some food sources do include fatty fish, fortified milk, meaning they're adding vitamin D to it, fortified cereals. Again, the word fortified means they're adding it to that food. It's not naturally found there, but then also egg yolks. Vitamin D deficiency is more common in older adults, which is the reason that this nutrient gets a little bit more attention when it comes to healthy aging. Now, again, in future episodes, we're going to dive much deeper into vitamin D specifically. This will be the first nutrient we go over, so tune in for next week's episode where we talk in more detail. Now, next on our list is calcium. Calcium supports bone health, muscle function, and nerve function. Like vitamin D, calcium needs are often higher in older adults compared to younger adults, especially for older women. This matters because bone loss naturally occurs with aging, increasing the risk for osteoporosis and fractures. Some good food sources include milk, yogurt, cheese, so our dairy products, but then also fortified plant milks. So again, these are plant milks where calcium has been added to it. Tofu, canned fish with bones like sardines. And one thing I always like to remind people is that calcium and vitamin D work together. So it's important to think about both of these nutrients and not just one. And again, we'll dive much deeper into calcium in an upcoming episode. Next on our list is vitamin B6. Vitamin B6 plays a role in metabolism, immune function, and brain health. And what's interesting about the recommended dietary allowance for vitamin B6 is that it increases slightly for older adults compared to younger adults. So this isn't typically a nutrient that gets a lot of attention, but because we know the recommended guidelines on how much of this nutrient you should get is higher for older adults, I did want to include it on this list and talk about it on the podcast. So some food sources of vitamin B6 include fish, chicken, potatoes, bananas, chickpeas. Vitamin B6 is one of those nutrients people may not think about often, but it still plays an important role in healthy aging and overall health. And again, yes, we will have a full episode dedicated to B6 as we move forward. So next on our list is vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is important for nerve health, brain function, and red blood cell production. What makes B12 unique for older adults is that absorption often changes with aging. Some older adults produce less stomach acid, which makes it harder to absorb vitamin B12 from food. So in those cases, we need to make sure that people are getting their vitamin B12 from fortified foods. The B12 is added to the foods like cereals and or supplements. Certain medications can also interfere with absorption of B12. So even if someone is eating foods that contain B12, their body just might not be absorbing enough of it. Foods that do have B12 include meat, fish, dairy products, eggs, and fortified foods. And again, fortified, they're adding the B12 to it. Because deficiency symptoms can sometimes go unnoticed, B12 deficiency is definitely something that we pay close attention to in older adults. Now, we'll be talking more about vitamin B12 deficiency symptoms and when supplements might be appropriate. Next on our list is fiber. Fiber supports digestive health, bowel regularity, heart health, and blood sugar management. Fiber recommendations are actually a little bit different for older adults when compared to younger adults. And this is partially because calorie needs decrease slightly with aging. We'll be talking about that one actually in a little bit because sneak peek, calories is one of the important nutrients. But despite those adjusted recommendations, and what I mean by that is that older adults are actually recommended to have less fiber than younger adults. But the reality is most people, it's like 95% of people don't eat enough fiber throughout the day. So even if we see these guidelines that show older adults need less fiber, it's typically the other way around. All of us need more fiber, older adults included. So good sources of fiber include plant-based foods, fruits, veggies, beans, lentils, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. And one important reminder, if someone increases intake of fiber, they also need to make sure that they're drinking enough fluids and increase that fiber gradually, not real quick, or else your GI system might get a little upset at you. And yes, we are doing an entire episode focused on fiber as well. Next on our list is protein. Protein is a very important nutrient for older adults. Protein helps support muscle health, strength, healing, and overall function. What makes protein different for older adults is that research suggests that protein needs are higher in aging. And as we age, we do lose muscle over time. This is called sarcopenia. It's the natural loss of muscle with age. And so with older adults, it's really important that they get enough protein, and I'll add in there resistance exercise to maintain muscle. So good protein sources include eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, meats like chicken, fish, beans, lentils, and tofu. One practical tip that I try to emphasize is including protein at each meal instead of just, for most of us, it might be like at dinner we have a good source of protein, but making sure that we have a good source of protein at all 3 meals throughout the day. So protein is definitely a topic we're going to be diving into much deeper in future episodes, not just the standalone episode I'll be doing soon, but you'll continue to hear me talking about protein on this podcast because it really is important for maintaining muscle health and promoting independence in older adults. Okay, finally on our list, we have calories, and this one could surprise a lot of people. So much nutrition advice surrounds eating less, but for older adults, there often is a concern for not eating enough. Again, everyone varies, everyone's individual, but low appetite, illness, medications, chewing difficulties, fatigue, loneliness, and cooking difficulty can make it harder to meet calorie needs. And if you don't eat enough calories throughout the day, that causes unintended weight loss. And unintended weight loss does increase the risk for loss of muscle, weakness, falls, and poor overall health. So while calorie needs may decrease somewhat with aging, I did mention that earlier, and that's simply due to lower activity levels and changes in metabolism, many adults still struggle to eat enough to maintain their weight and muscle mass. Sometimes the nutrition goal for older adults isn't restriction. Sometimes it's simply maintaining weight and preventing malnutrition. And again, we'll talk much more about this in a future episode, and I'm sure many episodes to come, because this is an area I'm quite passionate about. Because if I can make sure that you are getting enough calories, enough protein, enough of all these good nutrients, it's going to help keep you stronger, healthier, independent, and having a better quality of life. Okay, so I was just throwing a lot of information at you guys. To recap, all nutrients are important, but these are 7 nutrients that I often pay close attention to in older adults because the needs may change with aging. Again, our 7 key nutrients are vitamin D, calcium, vitamin B6, vitamin B12, vitamin B12, fiber, protein, and calories. Now, again, this is a high-level overview, and in the next several episodes, I am going to deep dive into each of these 7 nutrients. If you want to learn more about this topic, you can head on over to the Geriatric Dietitian website. And if you found this episode helpful, be sure to follow the podcast and share it with someone who may benefit. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week on the podcast. Want simple nutrition tips to support healthy aging? Download my free guide, 10 Essential Nutrition Tips for Healthy Aging, packed with practical ways to stay strong, nourished, and independent as you age. Grab your free copy in the show notes or visit thegeriatricdietitian.com.